All right, Mrs. Williams, we're going to count down to start the meeting in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Melissa Williams, and I serve as the president of the Washington County Board of Education. I welcome this evening the members of the Board of Education, the superintendent, staff, and the community to the Board of Education's public business meeting. Everyone is participating in this meeting using a telephone or an electronic device. It has always been the practice of the Washington County Board of Education to meet in person and to invite members of the public to the board's meetings. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, certain legal directives, and the need to safeguard the health of the community, it is necessary to participate in this public meeting by phone or an electronic device. This evening's business meeting will be recorded, and the public may access the public meeting now on Channel 99, Facebook, and on the Washington County Public Schools website. The public comment portion of the meeting will not take place. The Board of Education encourages the public to submit their comments in writing to boe@wc.k12.md.us, and the information will be distributed to board members and the superintendent. At this time, I call to order the public business meeting of the Washington County Board of Education. I will do a roll call so that I may determine the members present and if we have a quorum. Please answer here. Mr. Bickford?
Here.
Mr. Evans?
Here.
Mr. Guessford?
Here.
Mrs. Murray?
Here.
Vice President Stauffer?
Here.
Dr. Zentmeyer?
Here.
Mr. Bakum?
Here.
Okay, we do have all members present and their student representatives, so I declare that we have a quorum. At this time, I'd like to call on Vice President Stan Stauffer to lead the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. We'll have approval of this evening's agenda. Is there a motion?
This is Mr. Bickford. I move for approval of the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Any discussion of the agenda? Do we have any abstentions? Any nay votes? All those in favor of approval? Okay, so we have unanimous approval of tonight's agenda. We'll move to approval of the minutes. Is there a motion?
Mrs. Williams, I move for the approval of the open session dated Tuesday, January the 5th, 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Guessford. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Bickford.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes of the business meeting of January 5th, 2021? Are there any abstentions? Any nays? All those in favor? Okay, we're unanimous in approving those minutes.
Mrs. Williams, I move for the closed business meeting dated January 5th, 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Guessford. Mr. Bickford. Mr.
Second.
Bickford.
Second.
Looking for a second for Mr. Bickford. Thank you, Mr. Bickford. We have a motion and a second for approval of the minutes of the closed session held on January 5th, 2021. Are there any additions or corrections? Okay, are there any abstentions? Any nays? All those in favor of approval? Okay, we have unanimous approval of those minutes.
Mrs. Williams, I also move for the open session minutes to be approved that were dated January 12th, 2021.
Okay, Mr. Bickford, I'm thinking that's not open meeting minutes. Isn't that a checklist?
I'm sorry, for some reason, I did not receive the full list of the minutes.
Okay,
Do we want to,
I
we can
believe,
move to the virtual meeting, the closed session virtual meeting, January 12th, 2021.
correct. Is there a second to Mr. Bickford's motion to approve the minutes of the January 12th open session conducted virtually?
Second. Dr. Zentmeyer.
Thank you, Dr. Zedmeyer. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes? Are there any abstentions? Any nays? All those in favor of approval? Okay, thank you. We have unanimous approval. So all of the minutes presented this evening stand approved. Thank you. It would be at this time that we would usually have public comment, but the public comment portion of this meeting will not take place. However, the Board of Education encourages the public to submit their comments in writing to boe@wcps.k12.md.us. Colleagues, we have no old business to conduct this evening, so we'll go to new business. Our first item of new business to consider is the consent agenda.
Good evening, President Williams, members of the board, Dr. Michael. Tonight I have 3 items for your review. The Purchasing Review Committee has reviewed these items and they are being recommended for approval. And staff is available if you have any additional questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bakewell. Is there a motion?
Madam President, I move to approve the renewals and procurements for 4 network servers to Applied Technology Services at a cost of $89,020. Student Information System renewal to EduPoint Educational Systems at a cost of $151,401.75. And 32 Microsoft Virtual Desktops from Bell Technologies at an estimated cost of $150,000.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Is there a second to Mr. Bickford's motion?
Second.
Mrs. Murray.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Any questions for Mr. Bakewell? Any discussion? Yes, Mr. Stauffer.
This may be more of a question for Dr. Michael, but the Synergy program, seems to me that several years ago when we started using Synergy, there were difficulties where teachers complained about putting grades in and they would disappear and so forth. I assume all those bugs have been worked out of this system.
I think with any technology, there's always bugs. We've come a long way with Synergy since we first purchased the product. There have been numerous updates since that time. It would cost a tremendous amount of money to transition to another system. And we've gained more confidence in Synergy over the last couple of years. We have a lot more features turned on in Synergy, and they've developed a lot of customized programs for us. So I think the answer to your initial question, Mr. Stauffer, is absolutely those bugs have been worked out. We continue to experience some new things as there are upgrades to our system or to our operating system, but it is the system we're vested in going forward right now.
And I have another question. What exactly does a virtual desktop allow students to do? I'm sure there are people listening who'd like to know, and I'm not a very technologically literate person at times, so what exactly does it allow students to do?
Well, I'll probably invite others to jump in if I don't do an adequate answer, but it's not a device. It's actually software that helps have access to like 1,000 licenses of various things. So it really runs a lot of our applications and software pieces. So the need for these desk-type devices really are enabling other users to access all the software and applications that are available. I don't know if staff wants to jump in and describe that better, or Mr. Bakto, if you have a better explanation.
Yeah, I was going to defer maybe to Chrissy Ramsey on that. She could probably give the best explanation.
I can answer it as well. This is Dr. Willow. So when we went to distance learning, a lot of our CTE programs, our business programs, things that would traditionally be done within the school environment, the virtual setting allows for these programs to be accessed from home. So this has been a tremendous benefit while we've been in distance learning for students to still be able to access the materials that they would have had they been in school.
I was just interested because it specifically pointed out students with career technology courses and some art courses and so forth. That's why I was interested in why.
Yeah, Mr. Stauffer, I do know that the career tech, it runs off of, most of their classes, if not all, run off the Microsoft platform. And so their devices, whether it be an iPad or a Chromebook, don't have the ability to get to the programs that they need. So this allows those students in both career tech and then, like the narrative says, some art classes as well, who also utilize the Microsoft platform. And it was something that we hadn't anticipated needing, but then with the distance learning, we'll use it until we don't need it, and then technology can turn it off, and then we no longer pay for it. And that's why we listed it as an estimated cost.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, I have one. This is
Yes.
Daryl.
Yes. Mr. Evans.
So I noticed that quote, going back to that estimate, I noticed that quote was dated January 12th, but the estimated usage was September 1 through June 30. So is that quote a little high then, or could you explain that part of it?
So that quote, so we've started using it. Technology, I believe, built those out. Chrissy, correct me if I'm wrong, in September at the beginning of school. We have paid a couple months of bills. I didn't realize, we didn't realize that it was going to exceed the $50,000. And when we got the second month's bill or third month's bill, we were getting either close to that or we had gotten to it. So I said, we need to take this to the board. So we went back and worked with Beltec, the technology team did. We're able to fine tune some of the how the program was accessed and ran to reduce our costs on a monthly basis. And so we got the quote just recently, but we've been paying for it since the beginning of school.
Okay, so this is something that we have been using. We just need to update the payment, I guess, for it then.
Yeah, and get board approval. Right, and get the board approval.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I was mainly, I didn't realize that we're already using it, obviously being new, so I apologize. But I was just thinking that, if we have 4 months left, does it make sense to spend $150,000 in 4 months? But that makes sense then.
Yeah, this would be for the entire school year.
Okay.
And if we don't use it, if we stop using it in March or February, then it would be a lot, it'll be whatever we spent plus the next month or two, and then it'll be definitely less than 150,000.
Excellent.
Are there any further questions? Any further discussion? Okay, we're voting on Mr. Bickford's motion to accept and approve the consent agenda. Are there any abstentions? Any nays? All those in favor of approval? Okay. Mr. Bacum, could you use your icon? I can't see you on my screen. Do you concur with the vote?
Yeah, I do.
All right, that's all right. Thank you. So we have a unanimous vote with the student member concurring. Thank you. Our next item under consideration is the contract agreement between the Washington County Board of Education and the Washington County Teachers Association for the 2020-2021 school year.
Board members, tonight we're very pleased. I think we have on available by phone, maybe by video, Mr. Eric Yeckley, the WCTA Chief Negotiator, as well as Mr. Neil Becker, the President of the WCTA. We've reached agreement on the contract for the current year. So this is an agreement that'll include all the way back to July 1st of 2020, and it's an agreement that'll go through until June 30th of the current year. So we're very pleased with the agreement. We appreciate the cooperation from the WCTA and their team. I don't know if Terry Baker is on and wants to make any additional comments, but tonight we're seeking your approval of that contract agreement that began July 1st of 2020. Ms.
Thank
Baker?
you, Dr. Michael.
This is Terry is on. I just want to thank Neil and Eric and their whole team for the collaboration and the conversations that we had to get to this agreement. I'm very thankful, and I appreciate their openness and all the work that we did to get to this point.
Thank you. I'd like to express my appreciation to both teams for the work done to reach the agreement, and I'm looking for a motion.
President Williams, I move to approve the contract agreement between the Washington County Board of Education and the Washington County Teachers Association for the 2020-2021 school year.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Any discussion? Any questions?
I have something.
Yes, Peter.
I
Mr.
would-
Bickford. Sorry.
Call me Peter anytime. I'm very glad for the agreement. It's always good when we come to an agreement and can sign. I think I don't want to speak for my other board members, but I can certainly say that it's unfortunate that we could only afford a small raise given the challenges of this school year. So I would hope that teachers know that the raise, the COLA increase that we were giving does not reflect the admiration that we have for the job that gets done every day.
Well said, Mr. Bickford. Thank you. Anyone else have a comment?
I do have a question.
Yes. Mr. Evans, was that you?
No,
Mr. Wilkinson.
that was Mr. Rokium. I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Bacum.
Do you think you can detail some important changes or stuff that is considerable that was made during this agreement, like some changes?
The contract allowed for each bargaining side to open two pieces of language. In the agreement, we've agreed on two pieces of language regarding extra duty pay and voluntary transfers. So there's some small changes to those. There is a 1% COLA that all teachers will receive retroactive back to July 1st. And for those who are at the very top step, our top step on the teacher scale, all of our scales have steps that are 2.5% apart. For teachers on the top step, that step is only 1.25% higher than the previous step, step 16. So part of this agreement was to adjust that so that all steps would be 2.5% apart. On the front end of the scale for teachers that are on the 03 scale, generally bachelor's degree, many beginning teachers, it does build out 5 steps with 2.5% apart. It's just a reflection on the scale. Teachers will not, this is not something where everyone is getting a step. To Mr. Bickford's point, unfortunately, we just were not in a position. We wanted to give more to all of our bargaining groups, but this is in line with all of our other bargaining groups with our 1% COLA across the board. There are no steps this year, just an adjustment to that top step of the teacher scale. And I would invite Mr. Yeck. I see Mr. Yeckley's hand up, Ms. Williams. I invite Mr. Yeckley or Mr. Becker to certainly comment, or Ms. Baker.
Mr. Yeckley?
Thank you, Ms. Williams, esteemed members of the board, Dr. Michaels and Dr. Pugh. It was just a joy to work with Terry and Lindsay's team this year. We honestly thought we were going to go to arbitration, but we sat down and had some good, honest talks, and both sides agreed on something we both feel that was mutually beneficial to both sides. And we are looking forward to continue with the cooperation leading into this year's round of negotiation. But it was a real joy to work with Terry and Lindsay and their team, because like I said, once we got down to it, and had some frank conversations, it was really cooperative in nature, and it just shows you what can be accomplished when both sides work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. I'll reiterate that. Dr. Michael and President Williams and staff, this is Neil Becker. The teams really dug deep and worked really hard to make the best of a very difficult situation as things evolved through the process. And the Board of Education team did all they could to work through this difficult situation. And I understand, Mr. Bickford, exactly your sentiment and appreciate that. I know the educators throughout the system do. You as a Board of Education and Dr. Michael and staff are limited in terms of what you can do when funding is what it is from those funding agents. So we appreciate the work that you did as a Board of Education team, and you strove, or were striving to be equitable throughout the process for all your units, and we appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. Stauffer, I'm not sure that I see Mrs. Williams. I don't know if it's possible she got kicked out. You might have to take over if she's not here. I think we have a motion on the floor and a second.
You're muted, Stan.
I just want to say it was an excellent compromise on the part of both sides to reach this agreement. Very important that it got done.
Mr. Stauffer, I'd like to suggest that you ask if there's any additional discussion.
Yes.
Maybe
Yeah,
take.
I just got a thing from Melissa saying that she's going in and out with the signal. Any additional discussion?
I'm sorry, something happened. I lost connection. I'm back.
We put Stan in charge.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not used to being in charge.
That's just what's supposed to happen. Okay, so go ahead. Where are we?
I just asked if there was any additional comments or discussion.
So we're at the vote.
All right, so we're voting for approval of the contract agreement between the Washington County Board of Education and the Washington County Teachers Association for the 2020-2021 school year. Are there any abstentions? Any nays? All those in favor? Okay, thank you. We have a unanimous vote with the student member concurring. Thank you. That was interesting. I'm not sure what happened there. Everything just went away except for my ability to put a comment in the chat. You all disappeared. Okay, we have a third item of new business. Under consideration is the contract agreement between the Washington County Board of Education and the Washington County Association of Supervisors and Administrators for the 2021-2022 school year.
Mrs. Williams and members of the board, we're pleased this evening to bring forward to you the first of what we hope will be 3 agreements with our bargaining groups for FY22 that starts this upcoming July. So this contract is in consideration for the current budget that we're in current discussions on, seeking funding for, and won't start until July 1st of this current year. This is with the Washington County Association of Supervisors and Administrators. Predominantly what's occurred in this document, we've done a lot of changes as far as rearranging the document, try to make it a little cleaner, a little bit more organized, clarify some language. The most significant change the board would be interested in, we're hoping to fund a step and a 1% COLA, and that's reflected in this document this evening. I do want to note, not only for the board, but for the public, it does say all terms are pending funding availability. So your vote this evening recognizes we may or may not be able to fund this, even though it is an agreement, even though we're signing it, it is pending funding availability, because obviously we don't know all of our funding pieces for right now. So this, different than our last budget item, is actually going forward into next year for July 1st. I believe Rachel Kirkpatrick is on the line and may have comments after the vote or during the vote if you have any questions. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Mrs. Williams.
All right, thank you. I'm looking for a motion for approval.
Madam President, I move to approve the contract agreement between the Washington County Board of Education and the Washington County Association of Supervisors and Administrators for the 2021-2022 school year.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Is there a second to Mr. Stauffer's motion?
I move to second the motion.
Thank you, Dr. Zentmeyer. Any questions, any discussion? Okay, Mr. Stauffer.
I would just like to add this comment that so the public knows this agreement is the result of what we call meet and confer with the superintendent, whereas the other 2 groups, the educational support personnel and the Washington County Teachers Association, negotiate with the Board of Education. So it's a little different process.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Anyone else before we move to the vote? Are there any abstentions? Any nays? All those in favor of approving the contract agreement between the Washington County Board of Education and the Washington County Association of Supervisors and Administrators for the 2021-2022 school year? Okay, we're unanimous and the student member concurs.
Mrs. Williams, I would like to offer the opportunity for Ms. Kane Kirkpatrick to make a comment if she'd like to. If she doesn't want to, she certainly doesn't need to. Rachel? I see your
Thank you,
hand
Ms.
up.
Kirkpatrick.
Thank you, Dr. Michael. We'd like to thank you, Dr. Michael, for bringing an open mind and a collaborative spirit to this meet and confer process this year. We really appreciated the discussion and the obvious value you placed in what we do every day. We also want to thank the President Williams and the rest of the board members for your cooperation and fortitude. We know there was a lot to review in this reorganization and for your approval of the proposed changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next item on our agenda is appointments to the Board of Education's advisory committees. Mr. Prue.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. This evening, staff is seeking approval of community members for appointment to board advisory committees as discussed in closed session.
Thank you, Mr. Prue. Is there a motion?
Madam President, I move to approve proposed candidates for membership on Board of Education advisory committees.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Is there a second?
Second, Mrs. Murray.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Any questions for Mr. Prue or any discussion? Mr. Stauffer?
I think probably we should inform the public as to what the names of these committees to which these people are being appointed.
Mr. Prue, would you like to take care of that for us?
I can. We are appointing members to the Facilities Enrollment Advisory Committee, the Budget Advocacy and Review Committee, and the Audit Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Prue. Are there any other questions? Is there a motion?
All right. We made it.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right. And we had a second? I'm
Yes.
writing on two different pieces of paper. I lost track of what I wrote.
I
So,
moved,
It
Linda
was
second.
Thank you. It was Mr. Bickford's motion with Linda Murray seconding it. So we're voting to approve the proposed candidates for membership on the Board of Education's advisory committees. Are there any abstentions? Thank you. Any nays? All those in favor? All right, we have unanimous approval. Board members, and the student rep abstains. So motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Prue. Okay, Mr. Prue, you're sticking around for the next agenda item,
I am.
which is consideration of a charge to the Facilities and Enrollment Advisory Committee.
So board members, tonight, we're bringing to your attention a request that you give the Facilities Enrollment Advisory Committee. It's one of your standing committees, some of which we just approved some members to fulfill all the slots on our Facilities Enrollment Advisory Committee a few minutes ago. To charge them, we're gonna have a two-step charge here eventually, but the initial charge, we're suggesting that they look carefully at our schools that are at 60% capacity or less, and for some serious consideration of what may need to occur. It's unfortunate with our operating budget being so limited. We need to constantly be reviewing our efficiencies, also our course offerings, our ability to offer equitable education, equality throughout our school system, particularly equity, how we manage our resources, how do we manage our resources short-term and long-term? How do we serve students short-term and long-term? And one of those big assets that we have, which is also a little bit of a liability, is our 3.6 million square feet that we have under roof. And our Facilities Enrollment Committee has regularly met over the years and recommended how to utilize that space. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Prue with some more specifics that are in the charge. And he's available to answer a question. And we are seeking your approval to charge the committee to begin the first step of this work. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Michael. Board members, as Dr. Michael indicated, the charge invites the committee to review facilities that are currently utilizing 60% or less of their state rated capacity based on the current enrollment. Moving forward after review, the board should expect recommendations to be returned to you approximately on or before April 20 of 21 for your approval and for disposition. The Facilities Committee will be reviewing several specific guidelines as it works through the recommendations as are laid out in Code of Maryland Regulation 13A.02.09.01. I also have Mr. Criswell and Mr. Rollins with me here this evening, who lead and provide staff advisory assistance to the FIAC committee, if you have any further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Prue. Is there a motion?
Madam President, I move to approve the charge to the Facilities and Enrollment Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Is there a second?
Second,
Who was
Mike.
that?
Mr. Gussman.
Thank you, Mr. Gussford. Any discussion or any questions for Mr. Prue or Dr. Michael? Okay, then we'll move to the vote. The vote is on the motion made by Mr. Bickford and seconded by Mr. Guessford to approve the charge to the Facilities and Enrollment Advisory Committee. All those in favor? Okay, looks like we're unanimous. Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Prue.
You're very welcome.
Dr. Michael, are you there and ready for your superintendent's report?
I am. I think I only have a couple things tonight. I mean, probably most significantly, I want to thank staff, our students, our families, and everyone for continuing in virtual learning, working so hard to make it a success. It is obviously not what we want to have for our students. We want to get back in person, but I continue to see amazing work from our educational support personnel, our teaching staff, our administrative team, also from our students that are working hard to try to learn virtually, as well as families, moms, dads, grandparents, caregivers, daycare providers, various people are joining us, including, Boys and Girls Clubs, and all types of people are helping our students learn during this virtual environment. So a big thank you to all of those people, particularly, again, our staff. You're really working hard to try to make this as successful as possible. Tonight, parents will be receiving a SMORE. It's our newsletter format that we share, electronic newsletter that we share with parents regarding our return to learn update. Unfortunately, at this point, I must report that we will not be able to return next Tuesday as we intended to do with students in some type of fashion. Our metrics are simply too high. I am encouraged for the first time in a number of weeks to see our metrics really start to not only level off, but start to come down substantially. So we chart in our war room, we chart the metrics every day, our positivity rate and our cases per 100,000. We hit a high, I believe it's 103 cases per 100,000 back the last week of December, and a positivity rate of 19%. Each week now we're seeing that drop by a couple percentage points. And I was very pleased today. I'm looking at the website right now, and the last recording I have is 13.49. I mean, it sounds like an outrageously high rate, and it is. But when you were looking at 18s and 19s and 17s, to see it steadily come down and stay down each week is encouraging. The other thing we're looking at as far as that cases per 100,000, which I think is really a little bit more accurate number to look at, we're looking at 73 cases per 100,000. Again, we were at 103 cases per 100,000 just 3. So we've dropped about 30 cases per 100,000. If that would continue to drop, I'm optimistic that we'll be able to return to learn on February 16th. And that's what our SMORE will say tonight, that our new return date, we would return, our goal was to return in stage 4 on February 16th. That'll be the day after President's Day. Unfortunately, students have been out of school since November 16th, for some longer than that. When we return in stage 4, our hope is that pre-K, kindergarten, and first grade students that want to attend school every day, we've prepared and we've accommodated for 6-foot distancing. Obviously, the children don't have to wear masks. For them to be in school every day of the week, 5 days a week, or 5 school days when we have 5 school days a week. Also, we're prepared for those students who are identified and attended during stage 2 and stage 3 to attend 5 days a week. The remainder of the students, primarily grades 2 through 12, will attend on an A day, B day schedule. So an A group would be Monday, Wednesday, and alternating Fridays. The B group would be Tuesdays, Thursdays, and alternating Fridays. For those parents that want to keep their child on distance learning, they'll be allowed to continue that. It'll be a little bit different. The schedule will change, the time frames will change. For the most part, they'll be joining students that are attending in person on the alternating day. There will be some instances where they might be in a class with other total virtual students, but for the most part, they'd be joining with other students that are attending every other day and/or some students that are attending every day. So we're optimistic that we'll be able to make that schedule. Nobody can really tell, but something's changed here in Washington County. A county that I've been watching carefully is Allegheny. Allegheny, at one point, again, they were 19, maybe close to 20% positivity back in the 1st of December. And they had over 200 cases per 100,000 people. Right now, I think they're running, I can tell you exactly what they're running. 34.69 per 100,000 people. So they have dropped from 200 cases per 100,000 down to 35 in about a 5 or 6 week period. So by the time we get to February 16th, which is, I think, 4 weeks from today, I'm optimistic we'll be back down in a range like that or better, and we'll be able to return in stage 4. So those are the main pieces that I want to share tonight. As far as athletics, there'll be a little bit of information that's more about athletics. Our hope is to start athletics on Saturday, February 6th with a modified schedule. We would pretty quickly, after the students are conditioned, because they're conditioning virtually right now, we would probably scrimmage all other county teams in the sport. And then 20 days into practice, we're eligible for competitive play. And we probably would play each team once. For instance, in basketball, we'd play, I believe 7 schools have basketball. You'd play 6 other schools in basketball. Beyond that, we just need to continue as a community, wear our masks, wash our hands. We are seeing that makes a tremendous difference. We just need to continue to do that as a community. We have taken a lot of steps to prepare as a school system, purchased a lot of supplies, desk dividers, classroom dividers, conference room dividers, obviously spray and wipes and all types of things. All administrators and all ESP staff have been working, continue to work since we've been back in September and since November 16th. And we've been successful with not having spread in our school system. And simply by everyone following the rules, I'm confident we'll do that as teachers return in full. Many teachers are already in their classroom and teaching from their classroom. And I'm confident we can keep students from spreading the virus by all working together. But in the meantime, we need to work together as a community, practice all those good practices and continue to drive these metrics down so we can successfully return, hopefully on February 16th. And Mrs. Williams, I believe that's all I have for this evening. See some
Mr.
questions.
Stauffer, I see your hand.
Just, you mentioned basketball, where there'll be an attempt to be wrestling and indoor track also.
We're seeing that happen in at least one other county and was well intended to happen there before the winter break. Again, we'll have to make that decision for February 6th. We've kind of pushed that out, but really if we don't get started by then, we can't really get our 20 practice days and get any amount of a schedule in. So it's really our drop dead date is kind of get all that started. And yes, we would have modified practice for wrestling and very strict rules during the meets and things like that, the scrimmages as well as the competitive meets.
Mr. Bookhoom, do you have your hand up?
Miss Murray had her hand up before me.
Okay.
Thank you. Dr. Michael, you mentioned desk dividers. Can you speak a little bit to that?
We started with 5,000 dividers. I don't know how effective they are, but they're being used in a lot of other counties. And in our classrooms, this is something we've purchased since we were last in November 16th. So it's a 3-sided, maybe Jeff can help me out, but 18, 20-inch tall plexiglass. So it's enclosed on the side, front, and the other side. So it kind of gives you a little area. Students would still be required to wear their mask. There are districts that are using those in place of a mask, but we would still require students to wear a mask as well as having that desk divider. If you go into any of our schools right now, you'll see in most of the reception areas, large plexiglass, almost like you see at a Sheetz or a store, large plexiglass hanging down in front of particularly the attendance secretary or the person that greets guests coming to the building. Also, our conference rooms have large, like 2 foot by 3 or 4 foot, or maybe longer plexiglass shields in the middle of them. Some of them a little banker window where you can pass papers between people. You know, we've continued with testing for special needs children and IEP meetings and things, some of those in person. So we're using all this right now successfully. So we have a lot of resources like that we have available to us. And so since our first purchase, we've had another purchase, and I've authorized Mr. Prue to make another purchase today, as well as some other items.
Good. Thank you.
Mr. Bakun?
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. Dr. Michael, many teachers have expressed concerns about teaching a hybrid class with like some people being online, some people being in person, and not being able to teach it like as effectively as they would if one was all in person or if one group was all online. What consideration has you and your senior leadership team taken to address those potential concerns?
Well, I mean, 2 pieces of that. We've really worked to develop all of our technology, much of which the teachers, if they haven't been back in the building since November 16th, some of which they haven't seen yet. But we really plan for teachers to return and basically address the children in the room. That would be their primary target audience. The children who are there 5 days a week would be in their room every day. The A/B day kids would be in their room every other day. So that's our primary. We want them to return to teaching, I hate to say as normal, because it certainly won't be that way. We purchased TVs, but also through projection systems or other resources that are already in the rooms. The students that are online, the teachers will be able to see their faces, the children will be able to hear. The children in the room will be able to hear the students that are at home, much like we're doing this Zoom call. So instead of looking at 1-inch squares, as we do right now, when there's 20 children online, there might be 5 children in the room that are there every day, another 7 or 8 that are there every other day, and another 7 or 8 that are online. So what we're hoping is you'll see this 4 by 5, fairly large picture of students. They obviously can call on the teacher, they can raise their hand, not like we're doing here, but physically raise their hand. We're hoping people will be able to see them. That's all part of why we had to get back in the room and kind of get all that positioned. There may be instances that we could separate children into classes that are virtual and physical, but our challenge is maintaining 6-foot distancing when we combine classes physically, and changing teachers would be a major disruption to children, especially at this point in the year. We're going to be 2/3 of the way through the year when we make this transition, and I would hate to change your classroom teacher. After 2/3 of the year being with one teacher, to then combine, pull you out of class and put you in another teacher for the last third of the year, and 5 other people from 5 other classes, maybe 5 other people from 5 other schools. I'm not saying that won't happen some, but we're seeing great difficulty with that, particularly with people that built relationships with their students. To pull that out would be a major disruption. So again, our goal is to return to normal with our time schedule as much as we can. It still is going to be a little bit of an abbreviated day, but it'll be a more extended day. Substantially reduce screen time for students, because it'll only be every other day. For those students that do elect to be virtual, or parents that elect to have their child virtual, there will be an increase in screen time if they're going to be on every day. And we'll certainly work to do our very best to address all of their needs, just like we are right now.
Thank you, Dr. Michael.
Are there any other questions? Anything else, Dr. Michael?
I think that's all I have for this evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to personnel action. Dr. Pugh?
Okay, I was talking and muted. I apologize.
It happens.
Good evening, Mrs. Williams, Dr. Michael, and board members. As discussed earlier in closed session, there are several staff changes for your review. At this time, I ask for your approval of today's personnel actions.
Thank you, Dr. Pugh. Is there a motion?
President Williams, I move to approve the personnel changes presented to the board earlier this evening.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Any questions for Dr. Pugh? Okay, we'll move to the vote. Vote is to approve personnel actions as discussed earlier today in closed session. Are there any abstentions? Are there any nays? All those in favor? Okay, thank you. We have unanimous approval of the personnel changes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, reports to the board. It's at this time that we give committee reports. I think you may have some dates to announce with regard to first meetings of committees. Someone like to volunteer to begin, or should I just start calling off committees? Mr. Gessford.
Just to let you know that the facilities meeting committee is now just starting to form, and we have consensus on a couple dates. So we're going to speak with Mr. Pugh to see if they work for him, and we will announce it at the next meeting the exact date for that. But we won't meet any more this month. It'll be in February.
Thank you, Mr. Gessford. How about finance? Mr. Evans?
Yeah, the finance committee will be meeting Tuesday, the 26th at 8 a.m.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. How about curriculum instruction? Dr. Zentmeyer?
Curriculum and instruction will meet on January 26th at 4 p.m. at the central office.
Thank you, Dr. Zentmeyer. Human resources, Mrs. Murray?
President Williams, Human Resources will be meeting at the end of February, but we haven't finalized all of the details yet. But we won't be meeting in January. We'll be meeting in February.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Mr. Bickford, Policy Committee?
Policy Committee has not set a date yet. We will likely have our first meeting in March.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Mr. Bacum, anything from student government?
Nothing for tonight. Thank you, Mrs. Williams.
Thank you. Thank you, colleagues, for your reports. We'll move on now to miscellaneous business. And we have one item of miscellaneous business for this evening. And that is the appointment of someone to serve as Washington County Board of Education's representative to the Maryland Association of Boards of Education Legal Services Association. We need to appoint a representative and we need to appoint an alternate. I'm recommending that Patricia Ersprung, who is our Deputy Legal Counsel, be our representative to that association. And Dr. Zentmeyer has volunteered to serve as the alternate. So I am putting forth the name Patricia Ersprung as representative and Dr. April Zentmeyer as the alternate. I'm looking for a motion.
Madam President, I move to approve the appointment of the nominated individuals to serve as Washington County Board of Education's representatives on the Maryland Association of Boards of Education's Legal Services Association.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Any discussion, any questions? Are there any abstentions? Any nays? All those in favor? All right, we have unanimous approval. Thank you, Mrs. Ersprung, and thank you, Dr. Zentmeyer. Okay, next is for your consideration, future agenda items. Should have a list of 6 items. Coming up on February 2nd, a report on the behavior support program, we have 2 legislative briefings coming up, one in February on the 2nd, one on March 2nd. We have on March 2nd a recommendation of the Budget Advocacy and Review Committee relative to the board's draft general fund budget. And then in April and May, we will have legislative briefings. If you have anything that you would like to have placed on an upcoming agenda, please let a member of the Agenda Planning Committee know, and we'll take care of that. We'll move now to board member comments. Mr. Bakun, would you like to begin?
Yes, thank you, President Williams. In my comments today, I would just like to pose a question. I don't know if Dr. Michael can answer this, but recently MSD announced that that they're releasing $781 million to help students recover from the learning loss created by the pandemic. How much of that is going to go to Washington County, and then how would that be used coming forward?
So the chunk that Washington County is scheduled to get is just shy of $25 million. It has federal restrictions and needs to be looked at as restricted money. Unfortunately, like many of our restricted accounts, it's got to be used for only what it's intended to be used for. So it can't be used for things like salary increases and things like that we discussed here earlier this evening even, because that would have to come out of reoccurring money. So we have some preliminary plans. We have to submit our grant in less than a month. So I see big ticket items being the next 3 summers. So we have until September of 2023 to spend that money. This is early on the process, but one of the good things about our 100-day committee that we've established, that Dr. Willow and Mr. Becker are helping to co-chair, is we're going to seek suggestions from that group. I do see a significant amount of money being used over the next 3 summers for summer school. There's summer school 21, summer school 22, summer school 23. We could have almost the equivalent of year-round school, provided we have staff and students willing to participate to help close that learning gap. We use a significant amount of it for tutoring. There is some other tutoring grant that the Governor Hogan announced today. There's a possibility we'd use some for some short-term staff for the next couple of years. That is always difficult because I don't like hiring temporary positions. I like to be able to hire people and then be able to absorb them into our budget, but there is risk with that. So there could be some additional intervention for reading and math for other subject areas. So a lot of possibilities. I think we'll continue to use some of the board just approved a new executive director of technology this evening in their personnel changes. So I'm going to direct some of that money to technology use in the event we'd ever have to continue with virtual learning or do virtual learning differently or do our interventions via virtual learning over the next 2 or 3 years. I think that's going to open up an opportunity for students that don't have transportation for a Saturday school or after school type environment, or we'll give an hour for intervention, but won't give an hour and a half or 2 if we pick them up and take them back. So a lot of possibilities. We've already started brainstorming lists this morning in staff meeting, and we're already starting to write the parts of the grant, but we're going to be seeking information from our 100-day committee. And all suggestions are welcome, but it is not reoccurring money. That is a real challenge with some of this. There's every possibility there could be more federal money based on President-elect Biden's most recent announcement about a stimulus package or a recovery package. I think in that there could even be more money. But again, I'm sure it's going to have federal restrictions.
Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Anything else, Mr. Bakun?
Nope, nothing else. Thank you, President Williams.
Thank you. Mr. Bickford, comments?
The only thing I wanted to say was a thank you to the Keystone Club that for the Boys and Girls Club of Washington County that recently had a pajama drive for specifically the Nolan Village area. And they distributed that as part of their Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service project. And, you know, our daughter's 22, so we don't have the opportunity to shop for PJs for her anymore. So my wife certainly liked getting to go out and buy some PJs for kids. But I thought that was a really nice project to do. And I'm sure there's many kids in the area that are very happy to have those.
Thank you, Mr. Bickford. Mr. Evans?
Yeah, I just want to thank all the county healthcare workers and the county staff in charge of getting these vaccines out. It's a daunting task and not easy, but we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And hopefully with this, we'll be able to get the kids back in the classroom and on the playing field. And that light at the end of the tunnel is starting to get a little bigger thanks to the hard work that they're putting in. So we appreciate that, and hopefully it all goes to plan.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Mr. Guestford?
I don't have anything for this evening. Thank you, Mrs. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Guestford. Mrs. Murray?
I don't have anything this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Vice President Stauffer?
I would just concur with what Mr. Evans just said.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Dr. Zentmeyer? Dr. Zentmeyer, you're muted. Would you unmute and begin again?
Oh, still muted.
Dr. Zentmeyer, you're still muted. Would you unmute and begin again? Is your mute button stuck? We're having all kinds of.
Hear me now?
We can. We're having all kinds of technical difficulties. Go ahead.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands in times of challenge and controversy. I just want to sincerely thank everyone, especially teachers and students who are finding brilliant ways to engage and collaborate with one another as we continue to stand in these challenging times. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zentmeyer. I have no comments. So if there's nothing further, Dr. Michael, any final words?
Nothing further from me. Thank you.
Okay. Colleagues, if there's nothing more, then we'll adjourn this meeting. Okay, meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.